smash that like button. Woo!
Like and subscribe.
So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is just a quick video about my recent St Oswalds Way walk. Just some of my thoughts about it and some of things that you could consider. So, just some brief things about St Oswalds Way as a walk. It's attempting to retrace some of the steps that King Oswald took in the sort of 7th century in that part of what is now northern England. And it's linked to some of the early Christian movement, particularly with Lindisfarne not being very far. It's in a place called Northumberland, fantastic countryside. You start inland, you get to the coast and you go up the coast to Lindisfarne. The walk itself has been an official walk since the mid-2000s, so it's fairly well established. But I'll say more about signage and things later, but it is a fairly well established walk. Overall, I met very few people who were doing the walk, either a section of it as a day walk or actually doing the whole walk itself. Those that I did meet were going the opposite direction to me, but any walk in that part of the world you do get away from everybody. Not many people come up and walk in the Northumberland countryside. The walk itself, I mean, what does it offer? Well, it offers the story behind the name, St Oswald. So there's quite a lot you can read about St Oswald, and you visit various places, Heavenfield where there's a battle, and obviously Lindisfarne. So there's quite a lot in that sort of story sitting behind it. Pretty varied scenery, countryside, coastal. It's varied enough, you know, over quite a relative distance. And castles. You get to see a lot of castles. Okay, the length of the walk. Well, most official or websites that do record it look to it being about 97 miles from a place called Heavenfield, which is inland, over to the coast and then up to Lindisfarne, or from Lindisfarne down the coast and then inland to Heavenfield. So about 97 miles. I actually did a 110 because I added on an extra piece from Lindisfarne going up to the coast to Berwick, because that's where my train was to get home. But it is just under 100 miles. Just a separate little subject about choices. You've really got two main choices on the walk. The first one is, do you go north-south or do you go south-north? Now, if you finish going north, you finish going across to Lindisfarne, which I think is the better piece of the walk. And if you go south, you do that on the very first day, and then you go down the coast and inland. So I went northbound. Most guides and most official websites get you to go southbound. I don't understand it, because the best bit of it is doing Lindisfarne. The second choice that you have is the walk to or from Lindisfarne. There are a number of places to stay on Lindisfarne. The accommodation is fairly limited, so you could start your walk on Lindisfarne and walk across, or some people start it on the mainland and go across. But the choice you have is, do you walk the 3.5 mile road causeway, or do you walk the 2.5 to 3 mile low tide across the mud causeway? Well, for me, there's only one thing you're going to do, and that's walk across the mud causeway at low tide, and that's what I did. So those are really only two choices. Do you go northbound, do you go southbound, and do you walk across the causeway using a road, or walk across the mud at low tide? Okay, the next sort of mini subject is difficulty. Well, the word itself doesn't help, but how difficult is the walk? Obviously, it depends how many other walks you've done, how many you've completed. What I would say, if you've done any other walk of 4 or 5 days, then this is well within your range and you wouldn't have any difficulty. There are no real uphills or no real downhills. It's broadly flat, and it's a very, very doable walk. One thing I would say about the walk is, as it goes inland, there isn't much accommodation. So if you're booking it yourself and booking accommodation, then yeah, that's quite a bit of research. If you don't want to do that, get a company to do it for you, and you will get accommodation, and probably you will be picked up at various points and taken away to accommodation. On the coast, there are loads of places you can stay. and it's a lot easier. If, like me, you're wild camping, it's a fairly quiet part of the world. Wild camping, arrive late, leave early, leave no trace, perfectly doable. Next little mini subject is about food, resupply. Well, I probably had 50% of my food was what I carried and 50% is really what I bought. But you could go the whole way just buying food at pubs, at restaurants, from supermarkets. The only point I make is the inland section. There are fewer places to do that, and obviously up the coast there are loads of places you can do that. If I'd known, I would probably have carried less food. I carried 2 days of food all the way up the coast because I didn't know how much I would need. But certainly the inland section, there is less food. There are less food options available to you, but it is still very doable. And obviously if you're going from accommodation to accommodation, then it's not really an issue. As with all walks, water is a key consideration. And what I would say is on most of the walk, water was very difficult to find. Inland, I only found water by using taps at outside churches, or I bought water at a supermarket. Going up the coast, it was a little bit easier. There were a few more taps I found. I did buy water once, but yeah, water is not an issue. That's putting it too hard, but water is something you have to be wary of. Obviously, if you're wild camping, you generally carry far more water than people who are going from accommodation to accommodation and can fill up every day. But it is something you have to consider. One extra point on water is I didn't filter any water from any of the streams or rivers that I crossed. And the reason I didn't do that is generally for me, if I'm crossing a stream or a river that's close to the sea, that water, if it isn't tidal, that water has come quite a way. So it has probably got more crap in it and phosphates and goodness knows what else than water that you can get halfway up a mountain. So I, as a rule, don't get and filter water from rivers and streams near coasts. I'm sure if you have the right filter and an expensive filter, you could probably do that. But for my Sawyer squeeze, I'm not going to risk it. The next sort of mini subject are sort of maps and data and things like that. Well, I carried a Cicerone guide with me because that gives more information about the trail and the story behind the trail, which is useful. One of the issues I always have with Cicerone books is getting into the rhythm of the writer as to when they say, you know, go forward, when the path moves to the left, take an immediate right. Well, once you get an understanding of how that writer, the way they look at the world, it is a useful resource. But I did, at a number of occasions, use Hiker just to see where I was. You can just open the app and click on where am I and it will show you where you are. And also, even on an unpaid version, you can look up a walk, it loads, click where am I and it will show you where you are. And a number of times I was off trail. I carried no paper maps. I didn't think I needed them, and to be fair, I didn't. The guide and understanding the guide and some of the little maps in the guide, and every now and again making use of Hiker was more than enough for me to navigate the first section. Once you get to the coast, there are so many paths, and it's so well signposted, it's absolutely fine. But in that inland section, that's really where I needed support. Just an extra piece about maps and so forth. I found going northbound that the signage wasn't very good for a northbound hiker in the section that was inland, the first 2.5 days. There are a number of times when I did get lost, not very far, but I did get lost and either retraced my steps or went to the end of the field and cut round and got back to where I should have been. You do pass through a lot of farms, you go through a lot of fields. It's not always obvious. And what I did find when I got closer to the coast is the signs, if you were going southbound, all pointed in the right way. The problem is you only reach those signs going northbound and then you look back and think, well, where was the sign to get me to here? So I don't think it's particularly well signposted going northbound. It's probably absolutely fine going southbound. The inland section, I don't think it's particularly well signposted. The coastal section has so many signs, it has so many different paths, Northumberland coast path, St Cuthbert's Way, St Oswalds Way, and various other paths. So you're always okay. There are always signs. It's quite easy to do. But I think overall, it's not a hugely travelled walk, and it's not particularly well signposted as a result of that. Okay, final subject is really just about the kit that I took with me. Obviously, I had one night in a B&B at a pub, but otherwise I was wild camping the whole way. So I took my full wild camping kit. I took my hat and I took my puffy. I wore my puffy once at night and I wore it once in the morning when it was too cold. I carried my waterproofs all the time. I wore them for about a day and a half because it rained for one full day, and then the following day it was all pretty wet. I took my water treatment kit. I always do, never used it for the reasons I said before. I took my toilet kit. I used it once. There were ample opportunities to use toilets in pubs and in caravan parks and public toilets. So it wasn't actually an issue finding somewhere to go. I just used it once. I used my own equipment once. Trekking poles, I use them probably about 20% of the time. They are invaluable when you do need them. Otherwise, I just carry them. But the biggest thing with trekking poles is learning how to use them properly. If you don't learn how to use them properly, they're actually of no use whatsoever to you. All the other things in my standard through hiking wild camping kit, so first aid gear and spare clothes and things like that, I didn't make use of, but you still carry them. The only extra thing I took on this trek that I would not normally take were a pair of quite old sandals that I used for the crossing at Lindisfarne at low tide. You could use your walking shoes, trekking shoes, whatever, but they would get pretty wet. It's not that deep. It's probably 1 or 2 inches deep at the worst, and every now and again you do go across small water channels which are a bit deeper. But I took these sandals, perfectly fine, perfectly easy. The only issue I had is my sandals disintegrated because they were just so old, and that just meant it splashed a lot more than it would have done. But in terms of kit, as is often the case, you do take stuff with you that you never use, but some of the things like your first aid kit, you don't want to use. A final comment about St Oswalds Way. Would I recommend it to somebody? Well, I would really. It's got some stunning coastal scenery. It's always fantastic to see castles as you're walking along a beach. The inland sections, yeah, it's fairly nice rolling countryside. There are some forestry commission forests that you go through that are a bit boring, but not everything can be fantastic all the time. I would caution on signposting in the inland section. That could be improved a little bit. And obviously, as with all walks, it depends on what the weather is. For me, the weather was pretty much okay, so I wasn't hit hard driving rain, driving wind, so it was fine for me. But would I recommend it as a walk? I would probably do St Cuthbert's Way. I think that was a much nicer walk. The bit that St Cuthbert's Way misses is the coastal section where you can walk past all the castles. But actually, you could quite easily get on a bus and just go 15 miles down the coast and then walk back again. And you would include that section. So St Oswalds Way, yeah, glad I did the walk. I'd probably recommend St Cuthbert's Way over it. And then just throw in an extra piece of coastal walking. And that's it.
Smash that like button. Woo!
Like and subscribe.